Show me a little wrath.
That doesn't...
Created by Garth Ennis, the original comic is set in a world where superheroes, or supes, are real and treated as everything from soldiers to movie stars to products. These supes are mostly super reckless. They have egos the size of bull elephants, they have no regard for what's right and what's wrong, and most importantly, most of them are either perverts or just corrupt. There's only a select few who can be called the good guys, which prompts a secret government operation led by Billy Butcher and his team to keep them in check by any means necessary. But what the show does best is that it uses the source material as more or less an inspiration and crafts its own path for cinematic purposes. It creates new characters, subplots, character development, and most of these changes are right on point, which can't be said about all shows and movies that deviate from the source material. Now that the first 3 episodes of Season 4 of The Boys just dropped, we thought this was the perfect time to explore all the 13 major differences between the show and The Boys comics. So, without further ado, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Go.
Ryan doesn't become evil Evilson in the comics. In the 3rd season of the show, Homelander finds and reconciles with Ryan, his biological son, with Butcher's wife. It seemed like Ryan enjoyed being in the vicinity of his soup dad because he was someone who seemingly understood Ryan's powers. However, the 3 episodes of the 4th season are telling a different story. Ryan is not really into the evil things his father does, and how Homelander doesn't care a lot about people dying, or how he thinks that humans are just toys for the entertainment of soup. Nevertheless, in the comics, Ryan doesn't exist for more than a few minutes and meets a super grisly death. If you're not aware of what happened to him, I got you covered. So, Billy and his wife, Becky, were holidaying in Miami when they saw members of the Seven fight a monster and save the world. Unbeknownst to Butcher though, Becky gets raped by someone from the Seven. Well, the show told us in the beginning that it was Homelander, but in the comics, it was actually Black Noir, disguised as Homelander. Nevertheless, Becky becomes quite distant from Butcher, and he blames himself, thinking that he must have done something to piss her off. However, the reality was quite different. 3 months later, the couple was peacefully sleeping when a super fetus cut open Becky's insides with his laser beam to come out of her body. Butcher was horrified and devastated at the same time, but the super baby tried to kill Butcher with a laser. So, Butcher, in self-defense, grabbed a nearby desk lamp and beat the soup baby to death. That was the end of who could have been Ryan. I'm pretty intrigued to see what becomes of Ryan in the show now that he has killed Koi, the stunt instructor. I mean, that stuff is bound to take a toll on him, but it also has brought out many aspects of who Ryan is. I believe he is half Becca, someone who cares and loves and doesn't like violence. But, let's see. Black Noir and Homelander's arcs are super different. In the last season, when Homelander finds out that Black Noir knew about the fact that Soldier Boy was Homelander's dear daddy, Homelander kills Black Noir, but he returns in Season 4, of course, not as himself. They hired an actor to play the Deadpool-esque soup. By they, I mean Vought. However, Black Noir's story in the comics was fairly different. You see, he was actually made as a clone of Homelander by Vought, and was more like a failsafe in the off chance that Homelander went nuts and out of control. In such an event, Black Noir would kill Homelander. However, years passed and Black Noir was failing to fulfill the one purpose he was created for. Naturally, this made Black Noir grow more psychotic with each passing day. Eventually, he decided to go on for a long con to fulfill his purpose, to kill Homelander. He started to disguise himself as Homelander and commit crimes like cannibalism and rape. Case in point, Becky Saunders. Black Noir's plan of leading Homelander to his villainous descent was more or less successful, as Homelander went rather insane after seeing pictures of crimes he didn't commit. I mean, the guy had no memory of it, but there were pictures. You understand his dilemma, right? Eventually, Homelander tries to take over the White House, where Black Noir tells Butcher and Homelander the truth. The latter snaps out of his craze and fights his clone, only for Black Noir to kill him. However, Black Noir had received some really serious injuries, like missing a part of his skull and grave burns and disembowelment. Soon, the US military also intervened, which gave Butcher the opportunity to finally take his revenge against his wife's assaulter. Victoria is a man. As strange as that sentence sounds, it's actually true. In the show, she's played by the Australian actress Claudia Neuman. Victoria is a manipulative soup who can pop heads like they are bubble wrap. Of course, she is the vice president-elect and a manipulative woman who knows how to play the game. In the 4th season, she can be seen as willing to collaborate with both Butcher and Homelander to an extent. However, the comic version of Victoria is pretty different, with the only similarity between the two being the post of the vice president. In the comics, Victor K. Neuman, aka Vic the Veep, was the former CEO of Vought American and the Vice President of the United States. Known for being perverted and simple-minded, he was easily manipulated, which made him the perfect puppet for Vought in politics. After President Robert Schaefer dies in a bizarre Wolverine-related accident caused by Vic, he gets sworn in as president. But his time in the office is short-lived. Homelander, leading an army of soup, attacks Washington, D.C., and ends Vic's reign by decapitating him. In fact, Homelander even sodomizes Vic's decapitated head. Hughie grows a pair. In the show, Hughie Campbell starts off as a mild-mannered kid who gets roped into Butcher's team after A-Train accidentally kills his girlfriend, Robin, who was called Robin Mawhinney in the comics. Additionally, Hughie is pretty much an American in the show, while the comics portrayed him as an Irishman. Furthermore, Jack Quaid's appearance is pretty different from the original version of Hughie, but his everyman look and timid nature were kept intact in the Amazon Prime show. In fact, the character was originally based on Simon Pegg, who ended up playing Hughie's doting dad. While the show version of Hughie took only 8 episodes to see through Butcher's manipulation, the comic version was a well-meaning but initially spineless guy that Butcher easily pushed around. Eventually, Hughie reaches his breaking point and decides Butcher has gone too far, and Hughie makes it his mission to stop Butcher. Unlike in the comics, where it takes almost the entire season for Hughie to stand up to Butcher, the show has him defying Butcher by the end of the 1st season. This quicker development makes him more assertive, much like his love interest, Starlight. Starlight isn't a part of the boys. Now, the one notorious thing everyone knows about Starlight is how she was manipulated into going down on the meathead version of Aquaman from the Seven. However, in the comics, he had no role to play in all that, and it was actually A-Train, Homelander, and Black Noir who blackmailed the poor girl. Nevertheless, Starlight becomes an official member of the boys after ditching the Seven. She ditches her uniform and becomes a symbol of hope for the masses. But the comic version of Starlight is what you can call, let's see, timid. She doesn't join the boys. In fact, it's much later in issue 66 of the comics that she finds out what exactly is the job her boyfriend does. But they soon have a fallout and she leaves him for the time being. Kessler is a weak man with a sick fetish. Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays Joe Kessler, a CIA operative who crosses paths with Billy Butcher outside a confidential meeting with Grace Mallory and Robert Singer. It turns out, Billy and Kessler go way back, having worked together for the CIA 11 years ago. They reminisce about the time Butcher saved Kessler's life in Afghanistan and Kessler's, let's say, extracurricular activities. Kessler wants Homelander taken out before Soups start rounding up civilians into camps. Unlike others who are focused on VP prospect Neuman, he is all about cutting the head off the snake. In the 3rd episode, Kessler gives Butcher carfentanil, a super strong drug meant to subdue Orion. That's all we know about Kessler so far in the show. But it's clear that Mr. Morgan's character is gonna be pretty important to the overall narrative. At least, he would be a strong character who cannot be manipulated easily, given that he is manipulating Butcher. The only similarity between the Kesslers from the show and the comic are their last names and their profession as CIA agents. The comic version is called Howard Kessler, aka Monkey. Now, there's an interesting story about why Kessler is called Monkey. This is the boys' comic, Needless to say, the reason was a depraved one. You see, Howard had been raped in both his ears by 2 green monkeys, and since then, Butcher liked calling this guy Monkey. Oh, he also has a serious wheelchair fetish and loves paraplegic women. The female's origins were less dramatic. In the show, Starlight is the most powerful member of the team. However, this was not the case in the comics, where the title was held by Kimiko, aka the female. In the 4th season, Kimiko visits a therapist who kinda suggests Kimiko face her past in order to deal with it. While hunting for Sister Sage, a new suit, Kimiko gets a blast from the past after looking at a poster of a child behind a cage. She has flashbacks from her past and sees the Shining Light Liberation Army, the same organization that killed her parents and took her and her brother with them. She faced tremendous hardships here and became a killer. According to the comics, she, as a baby, accidentally ingested some Compound V and turned into a brutal killing machine. Except for Frenchie, no one really gets her. But she's always ready to rip someone's head off. She even moonlights as a mafia assassin. In fact, the comics do not reveal her name. The show gives her a new backstory and a name, Kimiko. In the live-action version, she was a child soldier injected with Compound V by her guerrilla group. This twist ties into Vought's plan to create supervillains by shipping the compound to terrorists, which would, in turn, boost the artificial need for superheroes. Starlight is not so outspoken. In the show, Starlight is pretty much a badass. At least, that's true, if you ignore the initial hiccup with the D. Anyway, in the comics, she's not really the confident young soup who is willing to take on the big guns like eating breakfast. As I mentioned earlier, in the books, she's forced to go down on Homelander, A-Train, and Black Noir, and when Hughie learns about it, he verbally abuses and shames her. Although he comes around and later apologizes, Starlight doesn't do much about it. I would say that she doesn't even stand up for herself, but that's not really the case with the live-action shows Annie January. There's no Starlighters versus Home Teamers. The 4th season of the show proudly presented its 2 warring factions, Starlighters and the Home Teamers. Now, you can totally draw political parallels from real life by looking at their ideologies. The showrunners even paint the Home Teamers in the colors of a certain political ideology. Nevertheless, this is so not the case when it comes to the comics. There's hardly any sides that the common people take. In fact, this reminds me of something that was said in Game of Thrones. You know, even during a war, most parts of the country live peacefully, totally oblivious to the effects of the war. But I guess this was true for the medieval period, not for the current times when everything is affecting everything else. Homelander was never smart enough to hire someone smarter than him. We know just how insecure, vile, egoistic, and violent Homelander is. However, he let his ego slide aside when he saw that everyone in Vought Tower just acted like a yes man to him because everyone feared him. To prove this, he asked the Deep to blow A-Train, who is suddenly developing a strong moral compass. By the way, nevertheless, Homelander understands that he needs someone to help him run Vought and give him wise pieces of advice. Now, I didn't expect it from him, given that he would prefer killing anyone who proved that they were smarter than him. Yet, he goes ahead and recruits Sister Sage, supposedly the smartest person on Earth. Up until episode 3, she has been helping him in a great way to achieve his goal, but let's see how much longer it lasts. Now, this was Amazon Prime's Homelander for you. Comic version is a different story altogether. In the comics, Homelander initially seems like the perfect hero, kind, caring, and devoted to protecting America and the American dream. But beneath that facade, he's a deeply narcissistic, disturbed, and psychotic individual who lacks empathy. As a superhero, he's incredibly brutal and aggressive, and doesn't care about the safety of his own teammates or the people he's supposed to protect. But most importantly, he's not very smart and is extremely gullible. So I stand by my earlier statement, the comic book Homelander was never smart enough to hire someone smarter than him. In the Amazon Prime series, Homelander is even more dangerous. He's cunning and unpredictable. He calmly threatens and manipulates people to get his way, rather than just, throwing tantrums. This version of Homelander is more calculative. There's no MCU like VCU. Now, in the show, A-Train was seen shooting his origin movie, where his brother is depicted as a drug dealer. A-Train's grammar is made intentionally wrong. Basically, they try to stereotype his skin color and the savior is supposed to be this coach. who was surprisingly played by Mr. Will Ferrell, which brings me to one of the biggest differences between the boys show and the comics. It's how they satirize different eras of superheroes. In the comics, the characters are twisted parodies of classic Marvel and DC heroes, turning familiar icons into deranged versions in a darker universe. The show, however, takes a different approach. It satirizes the genre during a time when superhero movies dominate mainstream entertainment. Instead of just poking fun at comic books, it targets the blockbuster comic book movies. Butt Soups even star in their own superhero flicks, with jokes about the MCU and the Snyder Cut sprinkled throughout the series. This meta-commentary has helped the show carve out a unique space in the superhero genre by directly taking aim at it. Billy's dog Terror is missing for the most part. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Billy's dog Terror, right? But the dog was a major part of the comic and shared nearly half the panels or more with Butcher. It was assumed that after Butcher lost most members of his family, including his wife, it was Terror that kept him sane and stable-ish. To Billy, Terrier is more than just a bulldog. He's a living memory of Butcher's late wife, Becca. The dog symbolizes one of the few good things left in Butcher's life. Naturally, Butcher is fiercely protective of Terror and even goes as far as killing the Crimson Countess when she threatens his dog. However, Butcher finds Terror dead, lying in a pool of blood, after a meeting with Jack from Jupiter and the Seven. Without a word, Butcher immediately seeks vengeance. Butcher corners Jack from Jupiter by holding him by the neck against a wall. He asks Jack why he killed his dog, and in a blind rage and overwhelming grief, Butcher repeatedly stabs Jack, even as the soup's guts spill out. But Butcher doesn't get his answer. Terror's death shatters one of the last pieces of his old, happy life, and Butcher becomes sadder and more stoic than he already was. New soup. Of course, the show didn't forget to add more new soups to the list, the latest of them being Sister Sage and Firecracker. But then, you should check out all the new soups in the video that we have made on the subject. Marvelous verdict. While the Amazon Prime Video series brings the world of its source material to life, there are some major differences between the comic and the show. The show uses the comics as a launching pad, but forges its own unique path. It retains the comic's bloody humor and satirical edge, but has scrapped several storylines, reworked many characters, and introduced new ones. Gen V has further expanded the universe. These adaptations make the live-action version of Garth Ennis' world distinct and fresh, even for longtime fans of the comics. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe.